My name is Ana Tiwary, and I own a production company called Individual Films, which is based in Sydney. And at Individual Films, we produce multicultural as well as cross-cultural programs and documentaries, features, things like that. So I'm very interested in telling untold stories from minority communities and giving them a voice. When I first moved to Australia about 7 years ago, I did feel that there was a gap in the diversity that we see on our streets and the diversity that we see on our screens. And I felt like there was a need to bridge that gap. The other thing that was quite troubling was that I felt that people weren't comfortable talking about these issues, about race or racism or lack of diversity. It was almost as though diversity was a dirty word. And I felt like someone needed to put it out there in the public space that it's okay to talk about diversity in a positive way. So I didn't want to harp on about the lack of diversity. I actually wanted to create a space or a platform for people to share what they were doing about increasing diversity on our screens. So a really positive platform where people like yourself and others who are passionate about various cultures could come together and share their events, their research, articles, or their work. So that's how diversity in Australian media started. I chose Facebook because it's a really direct way of reaching people. I could have created a blog, I could have created a website, but then directing people to it and trying to get traffic is always very hard. It just made sense to have a Facebook group where people could freely share what they wanted to and an open space, so not heavily moderated, so that people can really express themselves. Firstly, I think the big thing that it does is it creates a space where people can openly talk about difficult issues. For example, I attend industry events and I speak at forums, and sometimes I bring up the topic of lack of diversity in front of policymakers and funding bodies and things like that. And at one of these events, one of my friends told me, "Oh, you're really brave to bring up these topics." And I don't think anyone should be called brave for talking about basics. So I feel the group itself fulfills a really important task of just the fact that it exists is important. I also believe that reverse racism is also racism. So sometimes I feel people who are very passionate about diversity can go a bit too far and start attacking some mainstream races. And I don't favor that at all, and I do want to keep a check on that a little bit. But otherwise, everyone has a voice, everyone is free to say what they want to, and even if they say things that probably I don't agree with, I feel that some other people respond to it, and it creates a dialogue, and it can change people's way of thinking. So I keep it really open so that my way of thinking is also challenged, so that I'm not, stuck in my way of thinking and my world. So I think it's a really good question. So if you create a group on Facebook, how does that impact something in the real world? And does it really have an impact? I do care about that, but I think the fact that the group exists is a big deal in itself. And the fact that people are participating, the membership is growing, that means people are opening up to this idea. The reason for this group to exist is so that it supports independent filmmakers, but also people who are working in communities who are passionate about diversity on our screens. And so many people are doing so much wonderful work. So this is a platform to share that, celebrate that in a really positive way. I'm really impressed with the things that have started to happen in the past 5 years. So in a way, even if the group doesn't do much and just promotes the work that others are doing, I think that's a really good achievement. I think at the moment, the situation is that whether it's government, so whether it's politics, or whether it's media, it is very mono-ethnic. And what that means is that the decisions that are made are based on the experiences of just one ethnicity. And things need to change. I think we need more Indigenous people in politics, in media. We need more multicultural people in politics and media. And these are the two powerful areas that need change. Because, for example, I don't want to talk much about politics and who's taking the decisions. As a filmmaker, what I want to talk about is what sort of films are being made in Australia. And the problem is that our taxpayers are multicultural and our audiences are multicultural. But in between, when we look at our funding bodies, or if we look at our TV stations, and if we look at the decision makers, they're not as multicultural. And what that means is that they base their decisions based on their life experiences. And it's not an out-and-out racist thing. It's just a very subjective thing. I think the Australian screen industry and the television world especially is kind of caught between white and a bit of black, with the indigenous community being represented a little bit. There can be a lot more representation of the indigenous community, I feel, and there's a lot of beautiful stories there. But somehow between this black and white, all the different colors, the spectrum of colors are lost. So all the other multicultural communities are not really featured. So that is a bit of a problem. But I've noticed that ABC has started to include multicultural presenters, story ideas. There's an extra effort that's going on, especially after the release of the Asian Century white paper, which clearly says that there needs to be more engagement with Asian communities. So I feel change is on the way. I can really sense that change is coming. And I think filmmakers from multicultural backgrounds are very excited about the future, because they all know, and I know this as well for a fact, that the future of Australian media is multicultural. And nobody can really stop that. It is going to happen. It is taking a lot of time and effort from a lot of people, but it is bound to happen. So I think filmmakers from the multicultural community, I always see them happy and excited because they know they're on the right path. I think that is way too complex for me to answer. It is really depressing, the statistics, and the whole situation is just shocking, and I'm not sure why it is the way it is, and I do want to focus on solutions. So yeah, if there's anything that I could do to help, I would love to, but I'm not sure what the answer is to that. Absolutely. I think Islam is the most misunderstood religion in the world, and democracy as a model, I don't know how much it's working in a lot of countries and how much it's failing, but yeah, I think there's a lot of moderate Muslims that never get featured, and they are very powerful, and I think the minority that are fanatic get a lot of coverage. So I have no doubt that Islam can be progressive. It could be because of the certain class of people that live there. And if you belong to a certain class, and I mean if you own a house on the beach, you obviously belong to a very rich family. You don't really end up interacting with, again, this might be a stereotype, but you're kind of sheltered and you live a sheltered life. So you might not get as much opportunity to engage with people from different classes. And a lot of immigrants don't belong to the upper classes. I think immigrants should definitely follow the laws of the land, but I don't think that they need to give up their culture and assimilate. I don't like the word assimilate. Integrate might be a bit of a better word, but I really wish that immigrants would keep their own culture and hold on to it, because it's extremely valuable, and this is what enriches Australia. It makes us it really enriches our culture, and I think that's the beauty of Australia, that we have so many cultures that live here. So I would say that immigrants should really hold on to their culture and their values that they bring with them, but also adapt a little bit and try to understand Australia and be part of it and participate in mainstream Australia instead of disengaging with it. So I think the effort needs to be from both sides. I think mainstream Australia needs to make an effort to reach out to immigrants, but immigrants also need to make that effort to engage with mainstream Australia.